Hello everybody and welcome back to cloudguru.us. So today I'm going to be going over just an overview of the architectural data model, and this is in preparation for 5 of the builds that I'm going to be doing below, which is a Starbucks and Amazon.com, which is basically just templates that I'm working on. Then there's others like the Agile methodology, which I've already built in Salesforce, so that I'm actually actively using that one. It's something I've done in the past. That's the recruiting app from the Salesforce.com fundamentals book. And last but not least, we're doing Auction House. It's an auction house for a bank. We'll use Wells Fargo for this demonstration. But it's a 3-tiered approach to how data can move back and forth through triggers and cross-object formulas and some roll-up summaries and things like that. So a little more complicated, but by the time we get there, we'll be well-versed in how to go about doing that. So let's begin. Well, for starters, before we can dive into any data model or architectural diagram, we need to first understand how to read these data models. And to start, let's review UML, which stands for Universal Modeling Language, which is a formal way to describe states, relationships, events, things like that, and but other people will be able to understand what you were saying. So let's keep in mind going forward that UML is a language. Without this, you'll go into a meeting and the customer will draw a circle with some words inside of it, and they'll draw an arrow to another circle, they'll put words inside of that, and they'll say something like, this talks to this, or this needs to talk to that over there. But that doesn't really mean what we need it to mean for this transition of data. So we need to define things like, what does it do? How does it talk? What data goes across these systems? And what states are involved? So UML is a language to describe complex systems, and the whole idea really is to transmit an idea from one person to another, literally, and to think about things in a rational way that are mutually understandable so teams and individuals can model complex entities. So you're saying to someone, here's what the customer is doing. They need these data elements, these processes, these states, these flowcharts, and UML is a way to describe these things in a standard way. For simplicity's sake, let's take this little image I've put together here and think of the company as a box, and on each side is a different tool you can use to try and capture what the customer is telling you and put them down in a way that someone else can actually do the work. Something we should touch on are, for example, state diagrams. They're used to give an abstract description of a behavior or system. This behavior is analyzed and represented in a series of events that occur in one or more possible states. Sounds a little complicated, but actually, if we take a simple example of are the lights on or off in a car, it doesn't talk about all the relays and complex things that need to happen behind the scenes to make that light go on in the car, but focuses on the states that the car is in. So a single state may actually have a flow chart, may actually have a swim lane, some requirements, solutions doc associated with it. So the objective of these techniques is for people to be able to communicate in a standard way. A good example is when a business analyst goes to a customer site. What comes out of this meeting? Well, when a BA absorbs something, they produce some kind of a document. It may look something like a requirements and solutions document, which looks something like this. You'll have a requirements solutions status legend, definitions. You'll have your requirements summary here. You'll have use cases and requirements summary. So this is what a requirement solution stock. This is just one of the items that we can use, one of those sides of the box. Another one, for example, might be a swim lane. And there are a ton of examples of swim lanes. Swim lanes basically are designed like this. You have the cover, it's kind of like a cross hatch, and it looks literally like a swim lane. But we'll go into that in a little bit later. We're trying to keep this in the 5-minute mark. And so this is kind of, well, just another tool that you can use. And there's business process flows. There's whole lot of different things you can use to when the customer tells you something, like and you can basically put this together. And let me give you a perfect example, or a good example. For example, when a business analyst goes to a customer site, what comes out of this meeting? Well, when the BA absorbs something, they produce some kind of a document. Might be a swim lane, might be somewhat of a ERD or entity relationship diagram, but it may look something like a requirement solutions doc or use cases. So either way, they should use standard diagramming methods so that when they pass this on to the technical architect will be able to say, yes, I understand that this is what needs to be built. They can kind of suss out what the LOE or level of effort will be for this, and they produce their own documentation. And that in turn goes back to the BA, who will be able to understand that information and review that with the customer. So with standard diagramming methods, they should be able to say, these are the items, the data items that need to be built. Here's how they relate to one another. Here's how they are manipulated by the states of the customer system. So the more standard the system of approach, the easier it is to communicate and build a solution for the customer. Now this takes us to our first video for our data model, which is going to be a coffee house like Starbucks or Peet's. And this is a very simplified view, but what we're going to be doing in the following videos is going over these data models, and I'll be diving into the data schema inside. Of course, as you know, I like to go into the org, so we'll be going into the schema builder in Salesforce.com. We'll be developing some of these ourselves, and I'll show you how the agile methodology is developed and how that maps back to Salesforce. But what's important to understand here is these relationship within the entities. This is more of an ERD or entity relationship diagram where you can see the relationships, these crow's feet. That's the one-to-many. You can see whether it's optional or if it's a dash line, it's going to be essential, and that would regardless map to the master data or the lookup field. And you'll be able to understand what the primary key is, what the foreign key, and how those work in these many-to-many relationships and one-to-many relationships. So that's going to be our next launch in our next following videos. So hope you stick with me and enjoy the ride. Thanks.